Gia opened her eyes to the soft blue glow of morning light. She sat up in her sleeping chamber and looked at her hands. This morning they were a deep purple with small dots of bright yellow. She sighed. Another day of trying to hide who she was. All Islarians were born with blue skin, all except Gia. Her skin changed colors with her feelings. When she was happy, it turned bright teal. When she was sad, it became deep indigo. When she was scared, it paled to almost white with tiny red spots. Her family told her this was wrong. This was bad. This was dangerous. Gia, final meal preparation begins in 10 minutes. Her mother's voice came through the room speaker. Her mother never called her daughter like other Islarian parents did with their children. Just Gia, spoken like a command. Gia pulled on her full body covering. All Islarians wore light clothes that showed their perfect blue skin. Gia had to wear special thick garments that hid every part of her except her face. Her mother had created a blue face paste that Gia applied every morning. It smelled bad and made her skin itch, but it kept her secret safe. "I am coming," Gia called back. She looked in the mirror one last time. The blue paste covered her face completely. No one would know she was different. At least not from looking at her face. In the eating area, her family unit sat in perfect order. Father at the head, mother at his right, brother at his left. Gia sat at the far end of the table, far away from everyone else. "Your education results were received," Father said without looking at her. "Your science scores were acceptable. Your social harmony rating was not." Gia looked down at her food. "I tried very hard, Father." "Trying is not enough," Mother said. "You must succeed. The fall selection is in 3 days. If you are not selected for advanced education, you will bring shame to our family unit." Gia's skin burned beneath her coverings. She knew it was turning dark red with black streaks, her fear and anger mixed together. She breathed slowly until the burning feeling passed. "I will do better," she whispered. At the education center, Gia kept her head down. She walked carefully between classes, never touching anyone. Touch was dangerous. If someone felt her skin changing temperature and texture with her emotions, they would know her secret. "Attention final cycle students," the center announcement system said. "Fall selection preparation begins today. All students must report to medical scanning." Gia froze. Medical scanning. They had never done this before. Her heart beat faster as she followed the other students toward the medical wing. The scanning room was cold and white. One by one, students entered a large machine that hummed and glowed. When they came out, a teacher checked a screen and nodded or made notes. Next student. Gia, Family Unit 7249. Her legs felt heavy as she walked forward. The machine door opened. "Remove all coverings for accurate scanning," the medical officer said. "I cannot," Gia said quietly. "My family has religious practices that." "There are no religious exemptions for selection scanning," the officer cut her off. "Remove coverings or be automatically disqualified." Gia looked around desperately. The other students watched her with curious eyes. Her teacher frowned. "Gia, comply immediately," her teacher said. With shaking hands, Gia removed her outer covering, then her inner covering. The face paste had begun to crack and flake off. As her fear grew, her skin turned pale with spreading red dots. Gasps filled the room. The medical officer stepped back. "Genetic anomaly detected," the scanner announced. "Subject displays unstable pigmentation. Classification: defective." "Defective," her teacher whispered. She pressed an emergency button on the wall. "Security to medical scanning. We have an unregistered defective." Gia tried to put her coverings back on, but 2 security officers entered and stopped her. "Do not move," one said. "Your family unit will be notified." That night, Gia sat alone in a holding cell. Her skin shifted colors constantly, showing her terror and confusion. The door opened, and her family entered with the selection director. "Family Unit 7249, You have harbored a defective member, the director said. This is against Aslarian law. We did not know, Father said. We will accept standard punishment. The defective must be processed according to protocol, the director continued. Do you wish to perform the removal ceremony privately or publicly? Mother looked at Jia for the first time that day. Her eyes were cold. Publicly. To show our commitment to purity. Jia's brother wouldn't even look at her. 3 days later, Jia stood on a platform in the city center. Hundreds of Aslarians watched. Her family stood beside her, their faces showing no emotion. This unit has been classified defective, the ceremony master announced. Its genetic structure threatens our collective harmony. To preserve our perfection, it must be removed. Father stepped forward. We release this defective unit from our family. It is no longer our responsibility. We reject its flaws and embrace our perfect society. Jia tried to speak, but no words came out. Her skin turned deep blue-black, the color of her deepest sadness. Medical officers approached with a clear container. Inside was a sleeping gas that would make her unconscious. The defective will be placed in a disposal pod and sent to the waste planet, the ceremony master said. This is our way. Perfection above all. As the gas filled her lungs, Jia's last thoughts were of the stars she had studied in science class, so distant and cold, just like her family, just like all of Aslaria. They sealed her sleeping body in a small pod. With a hiss of air, the pod was launched into space, tumbling toward the distant edges of their star system. Jia, now considered trash by her people, drifted through the emptiness, her fate tied to the cold void of space. The small disposal pod drifted through the empty blackness of space. Inside, Jia floated in a deep sleep. The pod's systems were failing. The air was getting thin. Soon, there would be no air at all. Across the darkness, a small research ship moved slowly between stars. Inside, Dr. Jin checked his instruments. He had been studying space rocks for 3 months now. He was the only person on the ship, which sometimes made him lonely. But he loved the quiet of space and the freedom to work without interruption. A small light began blinking on his control panel. Jin frowned and tapped the screen. Computer, what is that signal? He asked. Unknown object detected. The computer replied in its flat voice. Size, small transport pod. Origin, Aslarian design. Jin sat up straighter. The Aslarians were famous for avoiding other species. They believed they were perfect and other beings were beneath them. Jin had studied them in school but had never seen one. Is it a communication probe? Jin asked. Negative. Life support systems detected. Very low power. Failure imminent. Jin's heart beat faster. Someone was in that pod, and they were running out of air. He quickly changed his ship's direction. Computer, plot intercept course. Maximum speed. Jin's ship raced toward the small pod. As he got closer, he could see it through his view screen. It was not a ship designed for travel. It had no engines, just small thrusters to push it away from a planet. It looked more like computer, analyze pod type. Pod classified as Aslarian waste disposal unit, typically used for biological refuse. Jin felt sick. Biological refuse. Did that mean what he thought it meant? When his ship reached the pod, Jin put on his spacesuit. He opened his airlock and floated out toward the drifting container. The outside was plain, with no markings except a simple code. 7249 JR. Using his tools, Jin connected a power line from his ship to the pod. A small screen on the pod lit up, showing information in Aslarian symbols. Computer, translate. Jin said into his helmet communicator. Contents. Defective biological unit. Disposal authorization. Family Unit 7249. Destination. Waste planet Orcs. Jin couldn't believe what he was reading. The Aslarians had thrown away a person like garbage. He worked quickly to attach the pod to his ship's airlock. Once it was secure, He brought it inside. The pod's door was simple to open once it had power. Inside, Jin found her, an Aslarian, small and thin, floating unconsciously in the cramped space. Her skin was pale gray with faint blue lines, a color he would later learn meant near death. "Hello, can you hear me?" Jin said, knowing she probably couldn't. He gently lifted her from the pod. She was lighter than he expected, and her body was cold. Her breathing was shallow and slow. Jin carried her to his medical bay and placed her on the examination table. His Schütz computer scanned her body. Subject: Aslarian, female, approximately 15 standard years. Condition: critical. Oxygen deprivation. Hypothermia. Sedative overdose. Treatment recommendations. Jin asked urgently. Oxygen therapy. Gradual warming. Fluid replacement. Warning: subject displays unusual cellular structure. Skin contains advanced chromatophores not documented in standard Aslarian physiology. So that was it. She was different from other Aslarians, and they had thrown her away because of it. Jin worked for hours. He gave her oxygen through a special mask. He wrapped her in warming blankets. He connected fluid tubes to her arm. All the while, he watched in amazement as her skin slowly changed colors, from gray to pale purple to a deeper blue. "Come on," Jin whispered. "Stay with me." 3 days passed. Jin barely slept. He checked on her constantly, adjusting her treatments. On the morning of the 4th day, her eyes opened. Jia woke to strange sounds and smells. The ceiling above her was not the smooth white of Aslarian buildings. It was metal with small lights. She tried to move but felt weak. Something was on her face, some kind of breathing mask. Then she saw him, a creature standing nearby, watching her. It had skin a color she had never seen on an Aslarian, a warm brown. Its face had different features. Its body was shaped differently. Joe's mind raced through her education lessons. A human. She was looking at a human. Fear shot through her body. Her skin turned white with red spots. Humans were primitive and dangerous. They were barely more than animals, according to her teachers. The human stepped closer, and Jia tried to move away. "It's okay," the human said. Its voice was deeper than Aslarian voices. "You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you." Jia's breathing came fast. How could she understand this creature? It was speaking her language, but with a strange accent. "My name is Jin," the human said. "I'm a scientist. I found your pod drifting in space. You were nearly dead." Jia's mind spun with confusion. The ceremony, the pod, her family throwing her away. And now a human had found her. "Why?" she managed to say, her voice dry and weak. "Why help me?" Jin looked surprised at the question. "Because you needed help. Because you're a person." Jia didn't understand. On Aslaria, no one helped the defective. It was against all their beliefs. "I'm defective," she said, the words bitter in her mouth. Jin shook his head. "No, you're different. That's not the same thing." He offered her a cup of water. Jia hesitated, then took it with shaking hands. "Your skin," Jin said with wonder in his voice. "It changes with your emotions, doesn't it? That's amazing." Amazing? No one had ever called her condition amazing before. "Rest now," Jin said gently. "You're still weak. We can talk more when you're stronger." As Jin turned to leave, Jia felt her fear slowly fading. Her skin turned from white to a soft lavender, a color of cautious hope she had rarely felt before. "Thank you," she whispered. Jin smiled, and for the first time in her life, Jia wondered if being different might not be a terrible thing after all. Jia sat in the small eating area of Jin's ship. It had been 2 weeks since he had rescued her. She was stronger now. Her body had healed, but her mind still felt broken. She watched as Jin prepared food. "On Earth, we eat many different things," Jin explained as he worked. "We like variety." Jia frowned. "Variety is inefficient. On Aslaria, we eat the same perfect nutrition each day. Jin laughed. That sounds boring. Boring. Jia tested the word. We do not have this concept. Things are either efficient or inefficient. Jin placed a plate in front of her. On it were small pieces of different foods in different colors. Try them, he encouraged. See which ones you like. Like? Another strange concept. Islarians did not like or dislike. They simply accepted what was best for all. Jia carefully picked up something yellow and put it in her mouth. Flavor exploded across her tongue. Her eyes widened, and her skin turned bright teal with silver swirls. You like it, Jin said, pointing at her skin. That's a pineapple, a fruit from Earth. Jia looked down at her arms. Yes, it is. Good. She tried another piece, something red. This is also good, but different. That's a strawberry. See, variety is wonderful. Each day, Jin taught Jia something new about humans. Humans valued differences. They celebrated unique things. They had music and art, and thousands of languages. They felt emotions and showed them openly. In return, Jia told Jin about Aslaria, about their belief in perfection, about how everyone looked the same, thought the same, and followed the same rules. But why do they consider your color changing a defect? Jin asked one day as they looked at star maps together. It makes me unpredictable, Jia explained. I cannot hide my thoughts. Everyone can see what I feel. This disrupts harmony. Jin considered this. Can all Aslarians feel emotions? Yes, but we are taught to control them, to keep them inside. That doesn't sound healthy, Jin said. Healthy is not important. Harmony is important. Jin pointed to the computer screen. Computer, show video of Earth coral reef. The screen lit up with images of underwater creatures. Bright fish in many colors swam among colorful coral formations. See these, Jin said. These fish use color to communicate, to find mates, to warn others of danger. Their colors are useful, just like yours could be. Jia stared at the screen. No one had ever suggested her colors might be useful. That night, Jin gave Jia a small mirror. I want you to try something. Feel an emotion and watch what happens to your skin. Jia felt nervous, but she agreed. She thought about Jin rescuing her, about his kindness. Her skin turned deep purple with gold flecks. What does that emotion feel like? Jin asked. Gratitude, Jia said softly. Now try another one. Jia thought about the food she had tried. The pineapple. Her skin turned bright teal. Enjoyment, she said. They continued for hours. Jin wrote down each color pattern and the emotion it matched. By the end, they had identified 27 distinct patterns. Jia, do you understand what this means? Jin asked excitedly. You can express emotions with more detail than anyone I've ever met. This isn't a defect. It's a gift. Jia felt something warm inside her chest. Her skin turned a soft pink color they hadn't seen before. What's that one? Jin asked. I don't know, Jia admitted. We don't have a word for it in Aslarian. Before Jin could respond, an alarm sounded from the ship's control panel. Jin rushed over and checked the screen. It's a message, he said, being broadcast on all frequencies. He pressed a button and a voice filled the room. It was speaking Aslarian. Jia's skin paled as she listened. Attention all space vessels. The Aslarian High Council reports the theft of biological property item 7249JR from approved disposal path. Any information leading to recovery will be rewarded. Unauthorized possession of Aslarian property is a violation of interstellar code. Jin turned off the message and looked at Jia. They're looking for you, but they're calling you stolen property, not a missing person. I am property, Jia said quietly. Defective property. No, Jin's voice was firm. You are a person, with thoughts and feelings and rights. Rights. The concept was new to Jia. Defectives do not have rights on Aslaria. "You're not on Islaria anymore," Jin reminded her. "And I don't care what they say. I'm not giving you back to people who threw you away." Jia felt confused. "But you will be in trouble. They will punish you." Jin shrugged. "Some things are more important than avoiding trouble." "Like what?" "Like doing what's right." Jin sat down next to her. "Jia, I've been studying those star maps because I've finished my research mission. I was planning to go home to Earth, but now." "You should go home," Jia said. "Leave me at a space station. I will find my way." Jin shook his head. "No, I have a better idea. I have friends at a research outpost near the Centauri system. It's a place where many species work together. You'd be safe there. And they would value your abilities. You would take me there." Jia's skin turned that same soft pink color. "Yes, and I'll stay with you until you feel comfortable. I'm not abandoning you." No one had ever put themselves at risk for Jia before. No one had ever seen value in her difference. No one had ever treated her like she mattered. As Jin adjusted their course toward the outpost, Jia watched him work. Her skin shifted to a deep blue with small white dots, like the stars outside their window. "What does that color mean?" Jin asked when he noticed. "I don't have a word for this feeling either," Jia said, "but I think humans might call it hope." Jin's small research ship approached the large space station. Through the window, Jia could see many ships coming and going. The station was shaped like a wheel with spokes connecting to a center hub. Lights glowed from hundreds of windows. "Welcome to Harmony Station," Jin said. "More than 20 different species live and work here together." Jia's skin turned pale yellow with green spots, her color from nervousness. "Will they know I am defective?" Jin shook his head. "No one here will call you that. Different species have different abilities. That's normal here." Their ship docked with a gentle bump. Jin gathered their few belongings and led Jia toward the exit. "Remember," he said kindly, "you don't need to hide your skin here. No one will judge you for being yourself." Jia took a deep breath and followed Jin through the airlock. They entered a wide hallway filled with people. But they weren't people like Jia had ever seen before. Some had 4 arms. Some had scales instead of skin. Some floated above the ground instead of walking. And there were humans like Jin, in all different colors and sizes. A tall being with green skin and large eyes approached them. "Jin, welcome back. It has been too long." "Hello, Director Pak," Jin said, smiling. "Thank you for allowing us to visit on such short notice." The green being looked at Jia with friendly curiosity. "And this must be your Aslarian friend. Welcome to Harmony Station." Jia's skin shifted to deep blue with gold flecks, surprise, and gratitude. "Thank you," she said quietly. Director Pak's eyes widened. Fascinating color change. "I've studied Aslarians for years, but never observed this capability." "It's why she needed sanctuary," Jin explained. "Her people rejected her for being different." Director Pak made a sad sound. "Their loss is our gain. We value unique abilities here." Over the next few days, Jia explored the station with Jin. Each new area held wonders she had never imagined. In the garden section, plants from 100 worlds grew together. In the market area, foods and goods from across the galaxy were traded. In the science labs, researchers from different species worked side by side. No one stared at Jia's changing skin. Some even complimented it. "Your emotional display is most efficient," said a robot-like being from a distant system. "Our species must use words to express feelings, which is slower." For the first time in her life, Jia felt her difference might be a good thing. 1 week after their arrival, Jin and Jia were invited to a special dinner. Representatives from many worlds would be there to discuss a trade agreement. "It's an honor to be included," Jin told Jia as they dressed in formal clothes. "Director Pak must think highly of us." At the dinner, they sat at a large round table with 12 other beings. The talk was friendly at first. Then 2 representatives began arguing. One was human. The other was a tall, thin being with orange skin. The Lurian mining rights must be expanded. The Orange being insisted. Our people need more resources. The human colonies cannot give up those areas. The human representative replied. We need them too. Jia watched the Lurian carefully. As he spoke, she noticed something strange. Tiny purple dots appeared on his orange skin when he mentioned the mining rights. The dots were almost invisible, but Jia's sensitive eyes caught them. She leaned toward Jin and whispered, The Lurian's skin shows small purple spots when he talks about mining. On Aslaria, that pattern means deception. Jin looked surprised. Are you sure? Jia nodded. Our biology is similar to Lurian's. The pattern is the same. Jin quietly told Director Pak what Jia had observed. Director Pak called for a break in the discussions and took the human representative aside. When the talks resumed, the human asked different questions. Why do you need those specific mining areas? What minerals are you seeking? The Lurian shifted uncomfortably. More purple spots appeared on his skin. Just standard resources, he said. Nothing special. Director Pak spoke up. Our scans show those areas contain large deposits of xantrium, a mineral used in advanced weapons technology. The Lurian representative looked shocked. How did you know? Let's just say we have our ways of detecting when someone isn't being completely honest, Director Pak said, nodding slightly toward Jia. The negotiations changed after that. A fair agreement was reached that protected both sides' interests. After the dinner, Director Pak approached Jia. Your ability just prevented a serious problem, she said. Thank you. Jia's skin turned bright teal with silver swirls, her color for happiness and pride. The next morning, alarms rang throughout the station. Jin rushed to Jia's quarters. Aslarian ship approaching, he said, breathing hard. 3 enforcement officers demanding to speak with station leadership. Jia's skin turned white with red spots. Pure fear. They found me. They hurried to Director Pak's office, where screens showed a sleek blue ship docking with the station. They're claiming you as stolen property, Director Pak told Jia. They say you belong to them and must be returned. Jin stepped forward. She's not property. She's a person. I agree, Director Pak said. But Aslarians are powerful. They rarely leave their system. But when they do, they expect to get their way. 3 tall Aslarians with perfect blue skin entered the office. They wore the black uniforms of enforcement officers. They looked at Jia with cold eyes. Defective Unit 7249 Jar, the lead officer said. You will return with us for proper disposal. Jin moved in front of Jia. Her name is Jia. She's not going anywhere she doesn't want to go. The Aslarian officer looked at Jin as if he were an insect. This is not your concern, human. The defective is Aslarian property. Director Pak stood tall. On this station, all sentient beings have rights. Jia has requested sanctuary, and we have granted it. Your station has no authority over Aslarian law, the officer replied. Perhaps not. Director Pak agreed. But we do have authority over who docks at our station and who trades with us. The 20 species represented here do significant business with the outer systems. The lead Aslarian's eyes narrowed. Are you threatening economic action against Aslaria? I'm suggesting, Director Pak said calmly, that treating sentient beings as property might affect how others view trade relationships with your people. The 3 Aslarians spoke quietly among themselves. Jia watched them, her skin now deep purple, the color of anxiety. Finally, the lead officer turned back. This matter will be referred to the Aslarian High Council. Until a decision is made, the defective may remain here, but this is not over. As the officers left, Jin put his arm around Jia's shoulders. Her skin slowly changed from purple to a soft blue-green. Relief. What happens now? She asked. Director Pak smiled gently. Now we prepare to show the High Council exactly why you belong here with us. 3 months passed on Harmony Station. Jia spent her days working in the Cultural Research Center. She helped visitors understand different species' customs and behaviors. Her ability to show emotions through her skin made her special at this job. When someone didn't understand words, they could see from her colors if they were doing something right or wrong. Jin stayed on the station too. He could have returned to Earth, but he chose to remain with Jia. "I have important research to do here," he would say when she asked why he stayed. But Jia noticed his eyes were always kind when he looked at her. His decision made her skin turn the soft pink color that she now knew meant feeling valued. One morning, Director Pak called them to her office. Her face looked serious. "The Aslarian High Council has made their decision," she said. "They will arrive tomorrow to announce it." Jia's skin turned pale gray with black lines, her color for dread. "Will they take me back?" "We won't let them," Jin promised. "Many people here would protect you now." That night, Jia couldn't sleep. She stood by the window in her room, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there was Aslaria, once her home, now a place of painful memories. The next day, 5 members of the Aslarian High Council arrived at the station. They wore grand blue robes with silver markings showing their high rank. They looked at Jia with cold, curious eyes. "This is the defective unit?" one asked. "This is Jia," Director Pak corrected firmly, "a valued member of our community." They gathered in the station's largest meeting room. Representatives from all 20 species on the station came to watch. Jin sat beside Jia, his hand close to hers for support. The lead council member stood and spoke. "The Aslarian High Council has studied this unusual case. We have concluded that Unit 7249JR was properly discarded according to our laws. However, we recognize that other species have different views on biological variation." He paused, looking uncomfortable. "To avoid diplomatic complications, we will release all claim to the unit. It may remain here, provided it never returns to Aslarian space." Jin jumped up. "Her name is Jia, and she's not an it." The council member blinked, surprised by Jin's outburst. "Our language does not have personal terms for defective units." Director Pak stepped forward. "Perhaps it's time for your language to evolve. Jia has helped prevent a major conflict between humans and Lurians. Her special ability made this possible. Would you call that defective?" The council members whispered among themselves. Finally, the leader spoke again. "We maintain our position. However, we are curious. Our record shows 7 other units with similar variations were discarded in the past. If they survived and show useful functions, we might reconsider our classification system." After the council left, Director Pak turned to Jia with excitement. "Do you understand what this means? There could be others like you out there." Jin was already checking the station's database. "I'm searching for reports of Aslarian rescue pods found in the last 20 years. Over the next few weeks, messages went out across the galaxy. To everyone's surprise, answers came back. On 4 different worlds, Aslarians with special abilities had been rescued. All had been thrown away by their people. All had found new homes among other species. Minna lived on a water world. Her skin could change to help her breathe underwater. Todd worked in a high-gravity mining colony. His body was stronger than normal Aslarians. Shuji had been taken in by scientists because her brain could process math problems faster than any computer. Using the station's communication system, Jia spoke with each of them. For the first time, she saw others whose skin changed colors with their feelings. They shared stories of rejection, rescue, and finding new purpose. "We should meet," Jia suggested. "All of us together." 6 months later, they did. The 7 special Aslarians gathered on Harmony Station. They came from different worlds, with different abilities, but they shared the same history, thrown away by their own people, saved by others, finding value in their differences. Director Pak organized a cultural exchange event. Representatives from many worlds came to learn about Aslarian biology and history. The 7 special Islarians spoke about their experiences and demonstrated their unique abilities. To everyone's surprise, 2 members of the Islarian High Council attended. "We came to observe," one explained stiffly. "Our society values knowledge." As Gia demonstrated how her skin could detect emotions that others try to hide, the council members watched with growing interest. Their faces showed no expression, but Gia noticed how carefully they recorded everything. At the end of the event, the lead council member approached Gia. "Your function has proven potentially valuable," he said. It was the closest to a compliment an Islarian could give. "We will establish a small research exchange with this station." It wasn't full acceptance. It wasn't an apology. But it was a beginning. That night, Gia, Jin, and the other special Islarians celebrated together. They sat in a circle, sharing food from different worlds. Their skin colors shifted and changed, creating a beautiful light show of emotions. "What should we call ourselves?" Tai asked. "We're not just regular Islarians. We're not defective, that's for sure," Shuj said. Mina smiled. "We're the found ones, found by others when our own people lost us." Jin looked at them all with pride. "You're more than that. You're the beginning of something new, a bridge between worlds." Later, as the others continued talking, Gia stood by the window looking at the stars. Jin joined her. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. Gia's skin turned a color no one had seen before, rippling waves of silver and rose gold, like sunrise on an ocean. "What does that color mean?" Jin asked. "When I was young, I read a human story. It talked about family. Not the family you're born to, but the family you find. People who choose you. I didn't understand it then." Gia looked back at the room, at the others laughing and talking, at Director Pak who had protected her, at the station that had become her home, and at Jin who had saved her when she was lost in the darkness. "Now I understand," she said. "This color means I've found my family."